Okay, good morning. That's nice and loud. I trust you can all hear me, as I'm very much able to hear myself. Okay, good. It's 9:30. Let's open the hearing. Thank you for all being here and your contributions to date. I'm Tom Bristow, and to my right we have Matt Birkinshaw. We're inspectors appointed to examine the Dacorum local plan and incidentally the St Albans local plan as well. So technically these are stage 3 hearings, if you like, stage 1 being legal compliance and strategic matters, stage 2 being a joint Hemel Garden community session with St Albans in St Albans, and now we're looking at site allocations more specifically. So I'm hoping everyone's here for that. If you have our program in front of you, we're on hearing day 7. Just a quick note, the program goes slightly out of order in terms of the matters, issues and questions. So the program is the one to go off. And what we're here to look at today are Hemel Garden Community's opportunities areas, Maylands, Hearts IQ, and Hemel Hempstead allocations. If I can start, before I come to the council to talk through any housekeeping points, any emergency procedures, 3 points from us, quite important. Firstly, we're getting ready for takeoff, so please keep your phones on aircraft mode. If you don't do that, it interferes with the microphones, and the microphones are very important to use because that's how the cameras track us for both the live stream and the recording. Previously, that interfered with the audio, so please do that. Don't also use any sort of personal hotspot to get on the internet. If you need the internet, there should be these around, and that's the way to get on that. So when you want to speak, it's the right-hand button on the microphone. Try and keep them quite close to your face so everyone can hear. We'll try and remember to do that as well, but please do anyone shout if we become inaudible. Please also take your things and clear your desk when you're leaving. You're of course fine to come and go during any breaks. We won't take offense at all, recognizing that not everyone is here for everything. And I'll come on to that in a little bit in terms of the order of how we take things. Of course, you might find it so entertaining you want to cancel your plans for the next few weeks. We'll see. Before we come on to some points, I just want to raise about how things work, how things operate in a hearing. If I could, Mr. Layden, turn to you and just get you to explain any emergency procedures we need to know.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. So, just to be clear, we're not expecting a fire alarm test today. The fire evacuation alarm in the form is a voice alarm system rather than a traditional siren. The alarm will announce that the building must be evacuated due to an emergency. The fire alarm test normally takes place on a Tuesday, and as I said, we will not be having that today. On hearing the fire alarm, everyone must immediately leave the building by the nearest available route, which is the stairwell immediately outside of the council chambers. There's a second stairwell just beyond the lifts at the end of the hall. Please follow a fire marshal when they are there. If in the event of a fire you would need assistance in using the stairs, it's important that you make reception aware of this now. The main assembly point is at the Market Square, which for those who don't know Hemel, you go downstairs out the front door, turn right, cross the signalised lights, and a short walk along Marlowe's will take you to the open space of Market Square. Toilets are located to the left after the lifts and are also by the cafe on the ground floor. The hearing sessions are being live streamed and recorded to be made available after the session. Please be aware and leave the council chamber if you do not wish to be filmed. I believe that's everything, sirs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So before I go around the table to see who's here, and it looks like we have a packed table, which is excellent, Just a few points on how this all works, given that many of you may have followed proceedings so far, many of you may not. The first point to emphasize, and I mentioned this, I think, late yesterday, is that everything before us in writing can be taken as read. There's a lot of information, and part of our role is, of course, to digest that, to consider how to address it. You'll see, for example, in our matters, issues, and questions, the MIQs, those draw from Regulation 19 consultation responses, of which there are several thousand. And we've also read all the hearing statements that have come in for this particular session. And just to make abundantly clear, there's no difference as to how we treat anything depending on how we receive it, so to speak, either in writing or at a hearing. And because of everything that we have seen, we may combine questions, we may omit questions that we have put on the matters, issues, and questions because, for example, we're satisfied with the information that we have to date. Of course, if ever you do want to say something and we haven't given you that opportunity, do tip your nameplates on end to indicate that you want to speak on a particular matter. The purpose of the hearing is, of course, to enable everyone who has a right to be heard, and that is confined to people who have put in a representation saying the plan should be modified to speak. But fundamentally, it's so that we get answers to the questions and the points we need answers to determine the soundness of the plan. Now, in terms of planning terminology, soundness is defined in the National Planning Policy Framework. The December 2023 version is the version that applies here. It's not crucially our role to improve the plan. For example, if something doesn't relate to soundness, it might be better a different way. That's not in our remit. It's also not to consider what we call omission sites, which are sites that someone has said, well, this one is better than that one. Fundamentally, they're not part of the plan. Now, I've taken a little bit of time to set that out, as it means effectively 3 points. Firstly, we ask questions of participants. There's no cross-examination. Please don't present to us. Don't read out kind of a presentation or repeat what we already know. Keep your contributions nice and succinct. And it's very helpful to us, the third point, if you can be really specific as to which element, and I think we broadly know, given that we're on allocations and people are here for certain allocations, which element of the plan you feel is unsound and what you would invite us to do in terms of your position. For example, we have been previously very open about our thinking, where main modifications may be needed for one reason or another, and the council are keeping track of all those. And we talked yesterday about preparing a schedule of those. And there will be consultation on them in due course. Generally, the process, how it's going to work today, we'll introduce what we're talking about, turn to the council for a short factual introduction in terms of the latest circumstances on a particular site. We'll ask some questions and then we'll broaden the debate out. As I said, if you do wish to speak, tip your nameplates on side. The nameplates helpfully provided by Louise St. John Howe, who's the programme officer. If there are any administrative points, please don't speak to us other than when the hearing is running. Those should be directed towards Louise. Now, we can only do so much, so thank you all for bearing with me. We will get going shortly, but we can only do so much in the room, so to speak. Although we visited many of the sites already, we'll need to reflect on what we hear, undertake site visits in due course, and really only having gone through that process can we take a view on whether sites are justified, deliverable, developable, etc. Another point, just to make clear, we're examining a plan. We're focused on whether allocations in this session are justified and effective. We're not taking decisions on planning applications. We're not dealing with appeals related to sites. So you may, for example, vehemently disagree with the decision that the council has taken, but it's not for us to reopen that decision. It's for us to consider whether allocations are justified and effective, the rationale for them. So with all that said, I hope that's clear. Towards the end of yesterday, I did suggest that we lead today with site HM11, which is Shendish Manor and Fairfields, I believe, as it's called. I'm hearing some rumbles. I hope those are positive rumbles, and I'm looking around just to see if there are any gaps in who we were expecting, but there don't seem to be, which is good. Now, that is simply because a lot of you have given up, helpfully given up your time to be here. The majority of you, I think, are here on HM11, so probably let's deal with that first, if that's okay. Then I suggested we move on to HM03, HM05. And then we'll sort of go back, track the running order. So with that said, I saw some positive body language on that. If we could just go around the table, please, and I'll start with the council and move this way. And if I could get, so this is people who have asked Louise and who have got effectively a space at the table to participate. This isn't everyone who's just here to observe. If I can go around the table asking you to introduce yourselves and also almost a straw poll of the particular site in which you want to contribute, that would be incredibly helpful for me, Mr. Bergenshaw, and I'm sure everyone here. So if I could start with the council. Thank you, Mr. Layden.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ronan Layden, Head of Strategic Planning at the Dacorum Borough Council. To my right is Craig Hall-Williams, KC, representing the council, and to my left is Keely Mitchell, Principal Planning Officer for Dacorum Borough Council. Thank you.
Good morning, Jamie Alderson, Hertfordshire County Council.
Morning, sirs. Roger Flowerday, also Hertfordshire County Council, but Transport for Hertfordshire team.
And if I, sorry, Mr. Scott, just if I can go back to Mr. Flowerday, your particular representations concern HM11 and HM13.
That's correct. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Absolutely. Mr. Scott.
Yes, Robert Scott. I'm a resident on Aspen Park, and my interest is in respect of the Shindish Manor and Fairfields HM11. I was actually, I am a chartered builder, and in fact, I have in the past been a managing director of development companies and construction companies, but I'm not a planning expert.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Morning, everyone. I'm Antonia May from BDP Planning, here representing West Hertfordshire NHS Trust, and here to talk about HM03 and HM05.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, sirs. Good morning, everyone. My name is Will Thompson. I'm also from BDP Planning, representing West Herts Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust, and that's relating to HM03 and HM05.
Thank you.
Good morning, sirs. My name is Alan Anderson, Councillor Alan Anderson. I've represented Kings Langley on Dacorum Borough Council for over 25 years, and leading objections to HM11. As an administrative error, I did originally register 2 or 3 additional speakers for this morning. I withdrew them, but it turns out they were available to speak after all. So with your forbearance, I would like to introduce the 3 additional speakers.
The only point is, I mentioned at the start, and I sort of saw this coming, yes, eligibility to participate. So only people that have put in a representation saying that the plan should be changed are eligible to contribute, or else we may get thousands of people. So the point, I think, is they can, you can, of course, source your own advice and contribute to the debate. But that's the key threshold. If they have put in representations at Regulation 19, they're eligible to speak. If not, you can, of course, talk to them and say what you want to say. But that's the key distinction, really. And we have to be quite strict on that, just as I say, in terms of numbers, or else we may be here for several years.
Understood, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Mr. Pichon.
Yes, good morning. Chris Pichon. I'm here representing the Kings Langley and District Residents Association and also the Kings Langley Parish Council.
Thank you.
Philip Aylett, Chair of the Dacorum Health Action Group.
Eamon Brennan, Nettleton with Potton End Parish Council. I'm here as a parish councillor, a volunteer for the council.
Thank you.
Morning, sir. I'm Mark Harnett, here representing my father, Michael Harnett, who is a resident on Roundwood, and I'd like to make a few points on HMLM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Nick Grant, Counsel, here on behalf of W Lamb Limited, the promoter of HM11. Unsurprisingly, here to speak on HM11. To my left is Mr. Jonathan Orton from iTransport, and sat behind me you have Miss Alison Jones from Boyer, all part of the same team.
Thank you. Now, we do have, not in order of significance, we do have some people in the second row, I believe, who will look to speak on certain sides. Can I maybe, before we go round, and does anyone in the second row intend to speak on HM11? Okay, and oh, this was unexpected. So, and you have made a Regulation 19 representation suggesting that the plan be altered, have you?
So the consultant's report was an annex to the hearing statement.
Okay, well, it was an annex to your hearing statement, presumably, and you're here around the table to speak.
Technically, yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So I'll hear from you, Councillor Anderson. Mr. Thompson, you put your phone.
If I may say, I'm accompanied by Sheila Phillips from the Trust, who is here if needed to deal with particular questions.
Okay, and just to be fairly strict to everyone, I presume the representation was from the ICHB, or is it the ICB?
ICB.
ICB.
I'm
okay.
also accompanied by Rachel Donovan from the ICB. So the representation was on behalf of both the Trust and the ICB.
Okay, and the individual you mentioned, just to be absolutely clear, have they put in a separate representation, or have they informed your representation?
Both the ICB and the Trust and BDP on behalf of the Trust have worked towards a statement of common ground with the Council on HMO3, HMO5 and healthcare matters. And to answer your question, the representative from the Trust has fed into our hearing statement. Okay, well, what I'm going to do on that is just lodge that in my mind somewhere, because obviously we're talking about HMO3, HMO5, and my attention is very much on HM11. So I'll lodge that in my mind. I'll have a think. Okay, so then, unless there are any administrative questions, let's go on to HM11, please. And if you're there on the plan page 143 of the hard copy. Now, we have set out, I'm just looking through a number of questions we've got. 8 questions. I wanted first, if I may, to go to question 6, which seems to be the key issue. And that question is, would development of allocation HM11 be suitably accessible and its effects on the highway network acceptable? A catchy question. So if we go there first,
But I did say that initially we'll get an introduction in terms of the planning status of the site, anything that's changed in the course of the examination so far from the council. So I don't know if it's Mr. Layden or Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell, if you could, just give us an introduction to the site and its status. Thank you.
Sure. So Shendish Manor is proposed to be allocated for around 500 dwellings, including specialist provision, a neighbourhood centre, including space for health provision, community building, 2 form of entry primary school, on-site suitable alternative natural green space, or SANG, new and enhanced golf facilities and public open space. No change to the planning status since the examination of the plan started. We noted in our statement of common ground with Boyer that pre-application discussions are currently ongoing, no live application currently.
Could just ask one more question. This is one of the sites that we discussed during site selection. Can you just bring us up to speed with when site HM11 emerged as part of the plan? So we've got the regulation 18, we've got the second regulation 18, we've got the regulation 19. If you can just explain to us when that occurred, that would be very useful. Thank you.
So firstly, I'm going back beyond that to our first regulation 18 in 2017, issues and options, that considered a range of site options and asked broad questions, not necessarily proposed allocations at the time, but a number of options. The site was then omitted from the 2020 and the 2023 regulation 18 consultations and was introduced as a proposed allocation in 2024 in CDO 1.1.
And I'm trying my luck here, but was this a site that was previously considered as part of the examination of the existing plan?
Not as a proposed, we didn't propose it as an allocation. It's not an allocation. I'm afraid that predates me in terms of if there were representations made, but I'll give that to Boyer.
Of course, understood, and we can come back to that, but it was just our understanding. So just to clarify, no planning application. There've been some pre-application discussions. We've heard as to when it sort of was in, out, and in the plan. If then we do move on to question 6, which really is one of the key points. Now I think I'm going to give a shot across the bow to the council and the county council, because there's a statement of common ground, isn't there, between you two in terms of highways, which touches on highways effects. And reading that, you might get the impression that it's okay. But if I read Mr. Flowerday, the county council's position, and I'm going to read that out and then see if this still remains your position, which is at 3.53, I think I have it, of your hearing statement. Given the lack of demonstrable evidence and therefore confidence that a policy compliant access strategy can be realistically delivered, the county council considers that this allocation currently fails to satisfy the soundness test of being justified and effective and does not meet the national requirement for allocations to be deliverable. Is that still your position, Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, sir. I think maybe a bit strong, but yes, I think it is our position broadly in terms of the fact that whilst I think we're broadly agreed that a strategy does exist potentially to make it acceptable, we're not completely clear whether or not that access strategy is deliverable or viable. So within our statement of common ground, we sought to suggest some alternative wording which we would be happy with, that would enable us to have the confidence that an alternative approach could be delivered.
Thank you, that's helpful. If I then turn to the council, I struggle, we're very open with our thinking, so, and that gives everyone the opportunity to say that they, they have thoughts on that. I struggle to understand the council's position, Dacorum's position, inviting us to treat this as a And I'm just looking, this would be a deliverable site. So the anticipated delivery from the local plan is 2027, 2028. I'm struggling to see how you are putting that to us with the county council saying that it's not, in simple terms. So effectively, are you inviting us to consider a different perspective to the county council in terms of access? Thank you, Mr. Layden, or Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, sirs. I've got 5 points on this. It's something we naturally have to give careful consideration to. But I think just on your first point, I absolutely remain confident about the deliverability of this site, notwithstanding the concerns raised. And that's as set out in our statement of common ground as referred to by Ms. Mitchell. So the first point is our response to this question 6, again, with regarding to the evidence and what we presented with regards to suitable accessibility and the effects on the highways network. It deals with accessibility on the highways network point. And we are confident that the impacts on the highways network can be suitably accommodated. And that the outstanding matter, as we understand it, is about sustainable and active travel links, which I think is the kind of outstanding concern, which is the severance point and how we get more people walking, cycling in a safe manner. The next point I've got is within that statement are paragraph 4.240 and 4.241 confirm that officers have sufficient confidence there is a solution with regards to the provision of vehicular access to this site. That's our starting point. And 4.244 identifies that a potential to deliver 3 points of access to this site ensures a degree of flexibility for managing the impacts of the scheme on the local and wider transport network.
And if we can just very briefly, if you can talk me through those 3 points of access. So we have the existing access to the golf course.
Yeah.
This is potentially going to be raised later. We have access, I think it's towards the northeast. There seems to be some sort of agreement there. Those are 2 points. The third point of access, where would that be?
Yes, and that is included within ED 39, our document we are referring to quite often recently. In that, on page 66, we do talk about access on that. We talked about the existing access, the secondary access, and secondary access can also be provided to the south on Rutler's Lane. So to the south of the site, and perhaps the site promoters may be able to provide some further detail on that, but we have seen enough evidence from them. So there is one which is to be secured. There is an existing legal agreement in place, the right to provide access to the north as a result of development of the estate to the north. That's secured up till 2038, I think, to deliver that. They have the existing access, but then there is the ability to provide access to the south also. So, and just moving on to that, the second point with regards to where we stand on this, the site promoter, Boyer Planning, on behalf of WLAM Limited, ID 939, in the Regulation 20 representations included a transport appraisal from 2019 and more recently from late 2024. And this appraisal includes an access strategy alongside considerations of wider traffic impacts in the area. Detailed access drawings were provided for London Road to the east, Rutler's Lane to the south, and access to Sheerwater North. And I understand, from our understanding in there, rate 20 reps. That's on the PDF pages, and forgive me, 1005 to 1009. So that is what we had taken into account, and we feel that, in our opinion, there's enough evidence proportionally for plan making to demonstrate the access point. And then 4.3 of our statement of common ground with Boyer confirms that the provision of vehicular access to London Road is listed as an outstanding matter between the parties. So with regards to maybe the points being raised by the County Council, I don't think we're a million miles off in that our policy requirement restricts the London Road over the existing access, we will call it, to emergency pedestrians and cyclists. So we are looking at mainly vehicular access, being provided from to the north and to the south, but that bridge access that would be restricted. Where we have a slight disagreement is how restricted it should be, which I think is the point that County Council make. I think that they want to restrict it to any vehicular traffic on that. If I can...
That's very helpful. And in terms of our understanding, the two key bits of evidence there, we have the 2019 and the late 2024 transport statements, which I presume I can see Mr. Grant is nodding, which the council, which Dacorum Council have taken into account, and that's given you confidence. Why haven't they given you confidence, Mr. Faraday?
Thank you, sir. Largely because this site, along with a number of the sites in Hemel, are heavily reliant on mode shift. This is an inherently sustainable location if you can deal with the severance issues to the station. And so where you are going to need to rely on a strategic level active travel corridor to get people to the station and directly to the town centre, for example, and other key destinations, it's important that people are encouraged to use that route. And I think if you have been to the site, you will note that there are some challenges around doing that from that existing access to Shendish Manor. So we do not consider that if you have vehicle movements on that route, in addition to active travel movements, that it is an acceptable strategic level corridor that is conducive to achieving the mode share targets that this site is targeted to achieve.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
Sir, thank you very much. Just picking up this bit, so as I understand it, the issue that's being raised by the County Council is in fact quite narrow. It really just relates to this third access point over the existing driveway and the extent to which it needs to be entirely car-free or not. And so for the reasons set out in both Reg 19 and Reg 20 representations and anything else we can particularly add to that today, we don't consider that it needs to be car-free. A shared surface scheme would be in line with HCC's own shared surface guidance and manual for streets, as we've set out in our rep. The design can be found in our ID 939 PDF page 959 and PDF pages 982, and again in our hearing statements. Fundamentally, it's not even with the current levels of transport over it, it's not a heavily trafficked route, and wouldn't we consider offer any particular problems to pedestrians or cyclists travelling over that route. So that being the sole, as we understand it, basis of objection, it's not with respect, certainly not a showstopper, sir.
No, thank you. And I said a lot will depend on, obviously, some detailed site visits and taking the points that we've heard and looking them through ourselves. Just in terms of if we are with you, and we often ask sort of devil's advocate questions, if we are with, say, you and Dacorum Council, that traffic issues here could be resolved satisfactorily, are you saying that the timescale, sorry, this is probably over to you, Ms. Grant. Are you saying that the timescale is realistic in terms of delivery from next year onwards? It seems like there is still, if those issues are resolvable, there's a lot to do in terms of a planning application, in terms of getting that agreed, in terms of satisfying the county council on their position. Is that realistic?
So yes, we think so. We've, as of the last couple of days, I think got a planning performance agreement signed with DBC. Obviously, the work that's happening on this local plan is not happening in isolation. We've agreed an update. I think it's in the addendum, to the statement of common ground we've got with DBC, which gives you a slightly changed trajectory, but fundamentally that's the latest position. So the timescales in that statement of common ground addendum, and we think delivery is still practical and realistic. Okay, now I'm going to broaden the debate out on this question. Good, I see that certainly one flag is up. If you have said what you want, do put nameplates down. Just looking around, but no, good.
Obviously, effects on transport are a really important consideration as far as local residents are concerned. We've seen various representations on this, so that is definitely something that we will take careful account, hence the reason for a lot of our questions, and jumping to this straight off. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, sir. I raised my flag because I was a little unclear from that conversation whether we were talking purely about the driveway or whether we were talking about the access from the north and south. I think it would be, I would need to be clear what the representatives were discussing at that point.
Let's turn to Mr. Let's turn to Boyer. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. So we were discussing primarily HCC's objection, and as we understand it, that was only regarding access over the extant driveway rather than access to the north or the south to Ruckler's Lane. So that was the focus of the points that I was making.
Sorry, I think it might help Councillor Anderson. Can we just be abundantly clear then on the County Council's position with regard to your view on the suitability then of the proposed access arrangements? We've got the County Council, so your position about whether or not that a driveway should be shared, etc. What's your overall position as we stand today then on suitability of the access for this site as proposed?
So we don't consider that the existing access is suitable for the development site from an active travel perspective. So the existing central Shendish Manor access to be utilised for private vehicles and also active travel users. So in essence, what we heard from Mr. Grant was that their submission referred to various kind of guidance documents, manual for streets, as saying that this was a suitable to have shared surface on, and that our own guidance, Herts County Council's own guidance, place and movement planning design guide, but that is kind of not strictly true. So the manual for streets, in effect, was a 2007 document, and shared space in that context was predominantly for sort of short cul-de-sacs, where you might have local movements on it. Pedestrians would only be going there because they live there. So it's a completely different context to the situation we have in front of us now, which is a strategic route and an existing access to a manor house and existing residences, in addition to how many additional other private residences we don't know might have access off of this route. So we fundamentally say that position is incorrect, and it also doesn't reflect the fact that the DFT placed an embargo on county councils from adopting shared space in 2018. September 2018, the DFT stopped the county councils from adopting shared space because of all the issues around mixing people in that environment with private vehicles. So that's the reason why we say it's not an appropriate access. What we've tried to do is come up with a solution that, if accepted, can make this acceptable, but the proposals to include shuttle operation over a bridge are not acceptable to us.
And I think it's a point that Councillor Anderson might be coming on to. What about the other proposed access arrangements? So to the north and to the south, what are your views on that? Because that's obviously, featured quite heavily in the reps as well.
In terms of vehicle movements, I believe that there's reasonable ways of achieving those access points, and they could be made acceptable. But to rely on them from an active travel perspective would be insufficient because they would not be direct to the station.
So just to get our position abundantly clear then, in order for you to consider the allocation is sound, and as Ms. Bristow said, we're not determining a planning application, so we're not into this level of detail. We're just, we've got to consider whether this site is justified and whether it's developable. So from a county council's perspective, can you just make everyone in here just abundantly clear what you consider that the access requirements for this site should be?
Happy to do so, sir. Yes, so essentially what we would ask is that we accept that from London Road to the railway bridge, there is existing residents that have direct access onto that route. It's their only way to their properties. We're not saying that they should be removed. There's only a few that would have direct vehicle access onto that. But what we're asking is for the point, from that point onwards, over the railway bridge into the site, that section of the access road would be turned over, in effect, to active travel only, so walking and cycling. So any existing or new proposed vehicle movements would need to be routed to the two access points north and south.
So in terms of the suitability of the main vehicle access points to north and south, your position is?
We do not consider that there'd be any inherent issues in achieving acceptable accesses in terms of vehicle movements.
Thank you, sir. Clearly, from my position, I would dispute that. We have gone to a lot of trouble and taken the very unusual steps of commissioning a professional report, which was supplied with a hearing statement. And Mr. Doverton is here and he can provide me with answers if you have any questions on that report, sir. The issue, whilst the driveway is important, and it's the one thing I will agree with the council on, that bridge cannot take the traffic or the construction traffic with a development scheme of this size. I think it's important to focus on the access routes to the north and south, which, you know, clearly, as I've said in my submissions very briefly, in my opinion, and with professional support, they are just not appropriate for the amount of traffic that this scheme would generate. It's not just 500 houses, it's potentially 600 houses and a primary school. And the existing network around the site is gridlocked already, and there are unavoidable on-the-street parking hazards, which make the scheme, in my opinion, undeliverable and unsound.
Would just say that I have read in detail the annex, your transport. I'm sort of looking at you, Councillor Anderson, but I'm also looking at, so I'm looking in that general area. I've read that in detail in terms of the critique that it makes of the site, the proposal, and more broadly, I have to say, in terms of the transport evidence supporting the plan. So those points are very well lodged in my mind. I suppose, Councillor Anderson, we heard there were two documents in particular. There's the 2019 transport assessment, which Mr. Layden referred to. Then there's the late 2024 document prepared by the site promoters. And I just want to check, and it's maybe something that you want to confer, that transport assessment critique, if I can call it that, was based on those documents, or was critiquing those documents, specifically the late 2024 document.
All I can say in response to that, sir, is that those assessments could only have been done at desktop level. And I'd ask you, if you haven't already, to have a really good look when you do your site visit to actually experience what local roads are like in that area, and at peak time in particular, whether we've already got gridlock onto neighbouring network nodes.
So an important point for us, we obviously have, and I think I joked yesterday that hearings can sometimes be unsatisfying. We have a huge volume of a body of evidence effectively critiquing another body of evidence. So that's obviously something that we're going to look very carefully through. But in terms of the discussion today, Mr. Grant, would you like to make any comments on what we've heard?
So yes, please, if I may. Just picking up some of HCC's points, and to be very clear, we're not proposing to put new vehicle access over Shendish Manor. It's walking, cycling, and emergency vehicles, but they're emergencies, and one would very much hope you don't see those too often. So it sounds like we might actually not be a million miles apart from HCC's concern on that. Especially, we understood that the issue was that HCC wanted to completely de-traffic that bridge, including for pre-existing, the residents, nearby residents who already exist there. That's we take exception to, and we say we can't do. But if the concern is just the residences and new traffic from our development, so we're not proposing to put that over the bridge at all. That's access to the north and south. So if that's where the battle line is, it can be pretty easily resolved.
Just point of clarification, where exactly are the proposed access points to the north and south?
Where's the nearest plan, John? So if you give me a second, I'll try and find you the quickest reference, if I may. probably section 4, sir, of our Reg 19, ID 939 PDF 981. That takes you to the northern access. 984 is the southern access, and the and 985 for the southern access, and then for the bridge, the current extant manor access is 982 and 983.
And just to get back to the sort of either the council or probably the county council, is that the basis upon which you've been determining the suitability of this allocation? Just want to make sure that we're sort of talking about the same access points. Because obviously, Councillor Anderson and his team sort of have critiqued that and made some comments around that, especially in terms of sort of land availability and sort of the ability to deliver access points there. Just tell us and help us understand what level of detail you've looked at in terms of reaching the sort of conclusion that you said you have reached, that you're satisfied that a scheme could be delivered an access from the north and south.
Yes, we've obviously seen the proposals, and subject to them being deliverable, we feel that there are measures that could be taken to limit the impact of vehicle movements onto the wider network. So in effect, I think the critique is broadly around the unfettered impact of vehicles exiting the site and adding to congestion and causing what they would allude to being a severe impact on the wider network. So what we have is a level of confidence that those accesses could be controlled sufficiently to prevent a resultant severe impact manifesting, where the queues kind of got to a level where they were complete gridlock on the network. So the strategic transport modelling that's been done through COMMIT doesn't show that level of impact. We wouldn't normally get into the detailed kind of junction-based modelling until planning application stage, and we have a paramics model, which is a more detailed model that would be used at that stage.
Absolutely, I didn't until that very last comment was made, so thank you, sir. I think that just proves the point that there isn't enough evidence for. I did actually, in conversations with the Anthony Collier, who's the manager for planning at Herts Highways, make the point that that no local surveys have been undertaken recently. So there is no evidence of existing travel levels. And I think that, plus the very last comment about the fact that no detailed work is done, I don't think that puts the County Council in a position to say that there would be no gridlock on the network, that this site could be accommodated. So obviously I stick to the argument that it's undeliverable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Mr. Pichon.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted really clarification from Mr. Grant about the access to. You've mentioned that it was for emergency vehicles and for pedestrian cyclists. Is that still your position on that? And how then are you catering for the hotel traffic and the residence traffic to access in and out of there, if you're only considering that you're looking to restrict the access points from others? I don't know how you can do that. So perhaps you could give us more explanation.
So I'm happy to answer that if you. So I was talking about the additional traffic, so from our development. So if you're an existing resident with pre-existing access, our point is we don't want to block it or stop it. Ditto the hotel and the golf. It's not to take away anything that's currently existing. So when I'm talking about that bridge being for cyclists and pedestrians from the new development and any pre-existing ones, but when it comes to vehicles, it's pre-existing only, not for us, not for the new ones. I hope that helps.
Can I just have another question, please?
I mean, question me, and I'll see if I want to question Mr.
Yes, certainly. My question back would be that whilst this is not directly at this stage, the applicants have also suggested that their new golfing facility is going to have a high volume of traffic. And my question is do they expect that traffic to come through this access point, or are they coming through the north and south access points?
My understanding is that that would be through the north and south access points, but Mr. Grant.
Yeah, yes, sir. That's the idea. It's not. So obviously, any expansion of the golf facilities is going to have to be subject to the same planning applications and discussions, and that can all be picked up at that stage. I mean, the point is, the point we're working on, the assumptions we're working on, is not remove what's currently there, but anything additional. So we'll channel in the most appropriate way in consultation, obviously, with the highways bodies.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to advice from my learned colleague behind, can I also at this point out that there was also two coding errors with the Comet modelling of the accesses, which shows that HCC's modelling was wrong and their analysis flawed.
I did notice that there were those coding errors, or in terms of. Sorry, I didn't notice them myself. Just to be clear, I'm not. I'm not plagiarising your work. I did notice what you said about them. You're being passed a note. So, what's the fair way to deal with this in terms of the coding errors, Mr. Grant?
So I'll probably bring Mr. Orton in on that one, if that's all right. It's getting beyond my expertise as a mouthpiece.
Orton.
Good morning. I think that's fairly anecdotal evidence. It's been placed on top of a strategic layout from the Comet model. It's been placed on top of base mapping, and they won't always align exactly. If you look at the A34 to the west, you can see that it doesn't follow the current route. Looking at it, you would assume between Abbott's Rise, which the report suggests it follows, and Rutgers Lane, whilst you put it on base mapping, it goes on to Abbott's Close or Abbott's Rise. You wouldn't assume it would use that, because these models don't take account of all minor junctions. So they would model in more substantial junctions, which in this case would be Rutgers Lane, as that is what provides access to development. There's a node on there.
So I'm not putting words in your mouth, but do you agree with the statement that, in your view, that may have occurred, but it is an incidental point?
I agree. Yeah.
So if I before going back,
yeah, Mr. Grant, then Mr. Anderson, then I probably want to move on a little bit. But yes,
of course. Just to contextualise a couple of things, you asked Councillor Anderson if the report that's been admitted, that's attached to his hearing statement, criticises our work. It doesn't. It criticises WSP's work. It doesn't criticise ours. So look, when we were getting into things like the Comet model, Mr. Orton's outlined that we either disagree with the point, or it may have happened, but it's not important. But that's not of our work. That's the council's.
Yeah,
just briefly, sir. I've received further advice, which is particularly important here. The coding was particularly wrong for the Rutgers Lane junction, the A4251 in Rutgers Lane, the one that's underneath the railway viaduct, because the error would seriously underestimate the junction's capacity and congestion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just so we've got an understanding, Councillor Anderson, and whether your transport colleague wants to answer this question. Is there any evidence before us to suggest that the allocation, so we're not getting into the depths of a plan application, but the allocation and the principle of the use of the land is unjustified and unsound on highways grounds, i.e. there couldn't be something put into the plan, be it policy wording or requirements, that would at the planning application stage provide that sort of fallback or safety net, as if you like, to actually thoroughly look at these things based on the actual specific details of that plan application and where people are going to move and how transport's going to work. Is there something that's so fundamentally flawed that the allocation would have to be, say, deleted in your view?
There is, sir, but can I just check very briefly before I answer that? Oh, it's got battery in it. Hopefully it'll work.
Thank you, sir. Peter Davidson. Yeah, it is our view that the site is undeliverable on traffic ground. Well, at least it's not been proven that it is deliverable in our view, well, in my view.
Just so again, so I can get the county council's views, because obviously, yeah, county council, you know, their position clearly is, yes, there's some sort of disagreements about some of the specific, you know, uses and shared services and access points, etc. Why fundamentally should the allocation be deleted in your view?
I think fundamentally the analysis that's been done is predicated on having big mode shift to walk and cycle. If that doesn't occur, then these junctions, particularly Rutgers Lane and the other end, are going to be in big trouble. And I don't think that the modelling shows that it's not going to be in big trouble. The mode shift, if it doesn't occur, means that, you know, all these roads are going to be congested, and plus the air quality in Apsley in that area of the high street is going to be terrible, and the bad accident record there. If the mode shift, if you do everything you can to get mode shift, you're still not going to get sort of all the traffic that is generated by that site onto walk and cycle. The most that mode shift gets in these circumstances is, you know, 5% tops of car drivers who currently drive their car. Thank you.
I've heard of musical chairs, but not musical microphones. I wanted to answer your question, sir, because with my submissions, I've gone to some pains to look at it from the promoter's point of view and see what could be done to make the scheme workable. And I pointed out the fact that the...
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you. There's a microphone on over there, and it sounds pernickety, but microphones can't move. So I understand what you did, but apparently it messes up the sort of the tracking, so we won't get your best side on the video. So.
Yeah, okay, thank you, sir. With my submissions, I went to some points to consider it from the other side. That being the case, for example, the A4251 Rutgers Lane Junction, I looked at that and thought, you know, could that be widened to accommodate more traffic? The answer is it can't, because of that railway viaduct. I looked at the on-street parking in Rutgers Lane and Shearwater Road and Linnet Road to the north. And again, the same situation exists there. You cannot remove that on-street parking to make the scheme workable. So my bottom line is this scheme would cause so many problems with both access and the highway network. It can't be. And the other point I'll make, sir, is that with the planning system going the way it is, as you'll be very familiar with, government policy is very much to try and front load the planning system and trying to ensure that issues such as these are dealt with at the local plan stage so that applications then receive deemed consent at the planning application stage. And that is one of the reasons why I for one, put a lot of effort into demonstrating that the scheme, if it got to the planning application stage, would not be deliverable. And why I think it is important that it actually is unsound, and the best way to make the plan sound would be to leave the site out.
Thank you. Now, I would, I'm aware that there are nameplates up. I think that, to my mind, flows nicely in mode shift in terms of actually returning us to question one, which is the nature of the site related to Hemel, Hempstead. But there are a few more flags up. So what I might do is go around, hear from Mr.
Harnett, sir, thank you.
Okay, do you want to dispense with the other, so I don't call you something else? Mr. Harnett, Mr. Scott, County Council, Promoter, Council, last point on transport, and we'll come on to question one. Okay, Mr. No.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that this is not a live planning application, but the deliverability of this site, the early deliverability of this site is absolutely critical.
Let's just pause.
See if that's any better. Yes, as I started to say, this is not I recognise it's not a live planning application, but the early delivery of this site is critical to the success of the plan because it provides the school which is required for the other housing allocations in the Two Waters area. So that's the context, I think, in which you need to consider how robust the evidence is in relation to the access to the site. And so I think it's very clear that not a great deal of work has been done on that. The county council accepted that they hadn't done any decent detailed modelling as it's not a live application. And the borough council seems to be working on the assumption, well, there are three accesses, so something will turn up, Mr. McCorbrish approach. We've heard this morning, in fact, that one of those accesses, the central access, is not going to be used for vehicular traffic. So you're then down to two accesses. My sense from the discussion this morning was that the county council wasn't aware of that either. So I think you have to question the validity of the assurances that you've been given by both local authorities that a solution will emerge.
Thank you. Very clear. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, sir. I don't wish to take up time for the meeting and yourself that is unnecessary, and I have actually submitted written representations and pictorial representations in terms of the problems that exist through the Spine Road, Shearwater Road, through Apsley Estate. And as a resident on that road, I'm very, very aware of the issues and the problems. May I just actually place an emphasis on the huge problem that I believe would exist in terms of the construction of the site and construction traffic going backwards and forwards down that road. It is already at times perilous, but just to sort of make a bigger emphasis on terms of the problems that exist, the council's refuge vehicles are sometimes unable to actually, because of traffic that's allowed to park down that road, enter into the cul-de-sacs to carry out their duties. So the construction traffic that's going to be actually moving up and down that road will be vastly larger than, and there'll be more traffic movement than exists with that. I believe 100% that it is undeliverable to actually construct that, the development on Shendish Manor using Shearwater Road, either directly going Shearwater Road or Linnets Road. I have actually issued pictorial maps of that, and you'll see how windy it is, irrespective of the traffic. I'm sorry to bring that in. I have put it in before, but I felt that it really is necessary to emphasise the risks.
No, and I have read not only yours, but other representations concerned about about construction implications. And I've seen the images you provided, both of the existing access and to the estate to the north. So thank you for those. Okay, who did I say I go to next? Was it? No, wait a second. It was Mr. Flowerday.
Thank you, sir. A couple of points, if I may. One was just to clarify our position around the access road. So our position isn't that we would support the existing facilities in Shendish Manor and the residents that side of the bridge from using that route. So we don't think that that is appropriate in the longer term with a new strategic site allocation with several hundred new homes wanting to use it as their primary point of active travel access to the station. So just to be completely clear on that, what we were suggesting was that the existing sort of 5 or 6 properties on the north side of the railway bridge would be acceptable to retain those. We're not expecting their access to be removed, and we feel that with new access points north and south, it feels reasonable that those existing access the existing access to the existing properties, etc., could be redirected through those new access points. Just to turn to Mr. Davidson's point, I think what you heard was exactly what we're trying to do, which is to focus on the mitigations that make the plan acceptable. So Mr. Davidson's critique was largely, so the COMET modelling had 5 scenarios in it, A to E, and Mr. Davidson's work is centred around scenario B, which is in effect the local plan growth, but with no mitigations. So what you heard is his suggestion that you're not going to achieve active travel, and therefore the situation that will manifest is one that's equivalent to a no mitigation strategy. What we're hoping to try and achieve is a scenario E, which is the local plan growth with the mitigation that can achieve the mode shift. Hence why we're asking for those modifications to the policy to ensure that we can achieve the mode share targets that are required in the modelling to make this all work. Hopefully that's clear.
That is clear, and that's a good point to turn to Mr. Grant. Anything you want to comment on what we've heard, in particular on any modifications the council has sort of preemptively suggested? That would be useful for us. Then I'll come to the council, given that it is their allocation, and then I'll move on to question 1.
So thank you. A couple of points. Obviously, there's been criticism, again, not of our documents, but of some of DBC's documents regarding modal shift. Now, so you'll be aware, of course, that pretty much the entire transport system now is being based on a vision-led approach, and that requires considering modal shift. The criticism, not made orally, but certainly in the papers, is a suggestion that the OTS and the modal shift targets just assumed what had been made back. So if you look at TRA 04.1, paragraph 2.3.1, and then Appendix D to that document, you'll see it's not been assumed, it's been considered quite carefully by the council. So it's the approach of modal shift is valid and in line with national policy, and realistic work has been done. The suggestion made that not a great deal of work had been done on this. So you have our documents. Certainly a point that we would contest, having done a great deal of work on this. In terms of the access to the north, particularly via, for example, Linnet Road and King Edward Street, for the reasons set out in the documents we've already provided, we think that is fine. We don't think that's problematic, even with the photos of the parking that's been provided. But even if at detailed stage or planning application stage, either DBC or HEC takes a different view, it's not beyond the wit of man or beast to develop a scheme to deal with that, up to and including, for example, TROs if necessary. We don't think that's necessary in this case, but it's not an insurmountable obstacle by any stretch, even if you thought it was. So we can deal with that, and in fact, so you can design a scheme that creates advantages by how you space cars that are parking on the road. The roads themselves are wide enough for the kind of traffic, including construction traffic, that's necessary, that may be necessary. So that we can deal with. In terms of the point raised by HCC that other than the 6 properties, the pre-existing accesses over the bridge point should be cut off. So we just don't accept that. The question is whether it's necessary or required to make this plan sound, not whether it's reasonable, which is the term that was used. And so that echoes some of the comments you made this morning. This is not, can we do it a little bit better? That is it unsound if we don't do it? And the answer to that is manifestly no. It's not a vast increase on traffic. And as I said in my opening comments, it's a relatively lightly trafficked route. Mr. Orton, is there anything else you want to add to the points that have been made?
I don't think so. I mean, that covers everything.
Or is there anything else that I can
No,
usefully add?
that's helpful. One point I'm going to come to the council, and one point Mr. Harnett made, which I'm just going to check with you. Effectively, and this comes on to sort of a mix of question 4 in our maths issue questions, which we're kind of taking in the round because we have to, because they all flow into one another. From your perspective, Mr. Orton, the intention to provide a primary school here is significant, is it not, to unlocking capacity, if you can call it that, for other development in Two Waters? That is a significant benefit, in your view, of this scheme. Yeah. Okay. Over to the council. You may want to pick up that. In fact, I would like you to pick up that point in terms of delivery of the school, especially seeing as we're looking at a deliverable in the council's view site. And any comments on transport? Thank you, Mr. Layden.
Thank you, sirs. I've got, I think, 3 points in total that I'd like to make, if that's okay. 2 of them are just going back, maybe points of clarification with regards to the addendum transport review that was appended to Councillor Anderson's statement. And it's just points of clarity. I think the County Council have helped me clarify certain points, but just with regards to the specifics of the detail. We understand that report on our review was very much around our evidence TRA 04.1, which was our November 2024 modelling report. Prior to submission, we produced an addendum to that report, TRA 04.2, and that includes the options D and E that were modelled, which is what Mr. Flowerday referred to. Within D and E, that added in the infrastructure delivery plan requirements that could be modelled within that model, which stem from the Hemel Sustainable Transport Study. So just the point there, that I think that the review is based on the consideration of models that have and have not tested the modal shift, 30% alluded to. It does not consider the fact that we did additional evidence that considered the requirements of the IDP and what that would do in terms of improving or mitigating the impacts of development. So I hope that's helpful. Secondly, on the point of access nodes, recognise that I think the points were made about the fact that it was our evidence, and it's right that we probably need to clarify that point. It has already been done, I believe, sufficiently by the County Council, but just to reiterate, Comet is a strategic model covering the whole of Hertfordshire. It is intended and considered by both to be proportionate for plan making. It doesn't model all minor roads, but what I can confirm from WSP and relevant colleagues is that the trips from Shendish Manor were basically put onto London Road at 3 access points. So the scale of road and the impact on London Road in particular has been sufficiently modelled at that strategic level in our view. The final point I got, and it's tied a little bit with your point about the school. I could probably take it back a little bit on this. And there's been a criticism from other parts of the borough of this plan that it doesn't allocate growth anywhere other than on top of hills or distant from town centres or distant from anything. And I think the important point about this site is that this site is on the edge of the existing settlement boundary of Hemel Hempstead. It's on the edge of Apsley train station. Our IDP has an expectation to deliver a western point of access to that station from this site. And just to probably wrap up, just a couple more points up, London Road itself is a key public transport corridor connecting this site with a much larger area, Watford through to Aylesbury. That's buses also. It's a very well used road for public transport. And then you have the added benefits, what this site is seeking to deliver. Primary school also, in terms of trip generations and the internalisation of certain trips, the site will benefit from having that and reducing the impact. And there's not been a suggestion here that, you know, from anyone that where should these 500 homes go that is a more sustainable location than what we are suggesting today, and what the impact that would have on the road and wider network if it was distant from train stations, distant from key public transport routes. And I think, you know, that's something that does need to be bear in mind, and, you know, has been a key consideration in informing the officer's recommendations as set out in ED 39 for this site.
Okay, thank you. So I see Councillor Anderson's nameplate is up. I do want to move on. Are you okay to, so there will be a sort of catch-all question at the end of this. Is there anything else? Are you okay to save it till that point? Okay, yeah, keep a list and we'll come to you, okay. Because I then wanted, because that flows nicely on, in my view, to the first question. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to skip through a few of the questions, explaining any views that we've heard and where obviously we need to take careful account of things on a site visit. So on the first point, and we just heard Mr. Layden talk about the relationship of the site to the built form that exists. And I just wanted to make clear, I know that, and it comes, Councillor Anderson, very clearly through from your hearing statement, that the site is entirely within the parish of Kings Langley. And in your view, there is a clear distinction between this area and Hemel Hempstead. Now, I know it doesn't touch the village of Kings Langley, but I've very much got your point on that. And I think in terms of the strategic location and the relationship of the site to Hemel Hempstead, that is something that we will simply have to reflect on, having heard your points, having heard the council's point. So, so I did want to skip over question 1, unless anyone wants to particularly raise a point on question 1, as I feel we're very well versed on the arguments there. Okay. Question 2, similarly, what is the site boundary based on, and is it justified and effective? Which also blurs into question 3, which is about the boundaries to the greenbelt. And we've got various views as to whether those boundaries are adequately defensible, how they've been considered, particularly along the western edge. So we have all those views in writing. Just procedurally, do we need, I presume we do, and this is a question probably of Mr. Grant, do we need permission to go onto the site and walk around? Because presumably it's private. Yes, please do turn around and get instructions on that.
So for most of the site, it's fine. For the hotel and golf course, we just need to let them know. So either as the case officers can do that, or via us. We're very happy to do it at whichever's easiest for you.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, just when we're on question 3, I know there is a suggested main modification in terms of the boundary of the site next to Shearwater Road. I think that's come from the promoters. It presumably relates to the northern access. Where's the council on that?
So within the addendum to the statement of common ground, I noted in my response to question 2, I think it's paragraph 4.211, that following the stage 2 hearings, the site promoter proposed corrections to the greenbelt boundary, which went beyond the Shearwater Road realignment. It includes it, but there are also kind of proposed new alignment to the greenbelt boundary. That's included within an annex to that addendum. The council has agreed to the suggested change subject to your consideration of it. It's following work prepared, more detailed work prepared by the site promoter as part of their pre-application discussions on the site.
Okay, so I suppose it comes back to a point that I'm sure Mr. Birkinshaw would raise if I didn't, that in order to recommend a change, we need to reach a position that what was before us was unsound. So can you or potentially the promoters talk us through what was unsound about the boundary as previously proposed, i.e. what is the justification for us recommending that main modification? Thank you.
I might pass over because I'm aware the site promoter has their landscape consultant with them, but I'll just say briefly in terms of the soundness point, the proposed realignment to the greenbelt boundary now follows more readily recognisable features on the ground. It's adjusted kind of in a fairly minor fashion, but to follow existing tree lines and wooded areas, particularly on that western edge, which is discussed in a lot of the representations. I believe that this would be a more readily recognisable boundary.
So yes, in effect, it's that point. It's actually relatively minor changes in the real world, but in terms of the policy point of linking up with readily recognisable and defensible boundaries, it brings it more closely into line with that and that test for you. So that's the reasoning behind it. Sorry, Sophie. So it also tidies up an access point, and we've spoken about access. I don't propose to reopen that particular discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Just briefly, 2 points on this issue, sir. First off, the boundary to the northwest, I'm getting this right, of the proposal site is as clear as boundaries get because it's the ancient parish boundary of King's Langley. There's even the ancient ditch, if you actually know where to look in the right places there. However, the main point I wanted to make is the western boundary of the site, as I've put in my statement. I think this continued discussion this morning demonstrates that, and the confusion as to where the boundary is demonstrates just how ill-defined it is and how indefensible it is. Thank you, sir.
So that point then over to the council to address. If I could also, we talked a lot yesterday about Greenbelt Reviews 1, 2 and 3 and where the council provided additional information in terms of site selection at our request, which DB examination document 39, 39A and 40. So you can pick up Councillor Anderson's point on the western boundary, but could you also just talk us through how the Greenbelt score or the value of the site to the Greenbelt was assessed through the Greenbelt reviews? And you're probably going to take me to ED 39, I suspect, on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So just, I'll deal with the initial point of the western boundary, and I'll pass over to Ms. Mitchell for the latter points. I think on the western boundary, and notwithstanding that, you know, this site is, its existing uses as golf course, and with that, naturally, there's obviously going to be a lot of permeability and a lot of kind of, you know, the need to review and revisit that boundary in due course, particularly given that the site is relatively open right now, natural between the kind of eastern edge up through the hotel itself. So there's a need here at some point to be able to determine as best we can the most appropriate revised boundary without extending it all the way up to and possibly including the manor. Our preference is to retain that on the basis of some of the discussion yesterday, the need for SANG, then that would be natural and that would be kept in perpetuity, at least 80 years as we determine it, but also the need then to maintain and retain the revised golfing offer on this site also. So with that, we've kind of worked up and looked at the best possible option for where that boundary should be. And with that, as with the discussion on North Hemel, there are components that will need to be improved and strengthened, as part of that process. It requires further work, but that will be something that will be dealt with at the application stage. But I believe that we have sufficient policy and a wording to enable that right now. So if that's okay, I might pass over to Ms. Mitchell.
Of course, Ms. Mitchell.
To take the site selection point, in the response to question 2, summarise the result of the Greenbelt Stage 2 study. I note that the site fell within, we discussed this yesterday as well, a larger parcel, DS3, that was assessed to perform weakly against the purposes within that study. And then the study proposed or suggested a revised parcel, which actually broadly corresponds to the area of the site which we're now proposing to release, and said that it doesn't compromise the ability of the wider Greenbelt to meet its purposes. That's in table 7.2 of CSN 08.1, so that's Greenbelt Stage 2.
Thank you very much. And if I can, and I know Councillor Anderson, I'm forever holding off on your list of points, but if I can just, while the council's on the line, in terms of the landscape sensitivity study, so we're sort of moving, between questions 4 and 5. As I have it from the promoters, in that study, it was considered of relatively low landscape value. And as I have it, that document is CSN 10.1, parcel 82. Now, obviously, people will disagree with that finding. I'm not going to get into that, as that's a matter for us and the site visit, really. But just in terms of factually, is that the case, that we're looking at the landscape sensitivity study and that relatively, if we're looking at landscape value as opposed to greenbelt purposes, which are different, that the site scored relatively modestly?
We are looking at the Greenbelt, the landscape sensitivity study. Note that the northern part of the site was actually assessed to have a higher landscape sensitivity, and then the southeast parcel became more moderate. The relationship with the built form. The HELA didn't say none of the site is within or adjacent to the Chilterns National Landscape, didn't identify potential impacts with the national landscape in terms of the assessment of value or sensitivity, I should say, overall. It was moderate high.
Thank you. So, Councillor Anderson, Mr. Grant, back to the council, and then probably we're on to question 7, which is the loss of part of the golf course justified? Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, sir. On that specific point, I was actually the cabinet member of the council when the Greenbelt reviews were undertaken, and the assessment of DS3 that's been referred to only related to a part of the site at the bottom of the hill behind the railway line. And this proposal actually goes much higher up the hillside, and that's including the SANG at the top. The proposal before us goes higher up the hillside, as you'll see hopefully from your site visit.
Tallies, I suppose, with Ms. Mitchell's comment that in terms of the landscape sensitivity study, there's a difference between different elements of the site, okay?
Yeah, and it just goes to the heart of my comments I provided already, sir, about the balancing out the issue, the benefits and the harm of the proposal, and the fact that, in my view, the harm outweighs the benefit.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
Sir, thank you. Not a tremendous amount to add to the explanation that the council has given us, so I won't labour the points. Obviously, sir, having gone through work and pre-app work in terms of identifying the boundary. If so, you look at the appendices to our hearing statement, you'll see it plotted, in effect, the new boundary plotted against what's there on the ground. And we say that's a clear and recognisable boundary. And as you know, as can be noted, it can be reinforced. There's no barrier to that, or fundamentally no policy problem with recognising it and recognising that reinforcement can take place. Landscape, in terms of greenbelt impacts and in terms of landscape value, I'd also note that you've got reports from HDA that have been annexed to both our Reg 19 and Reg 20 submissions. So that analysis from HDA breaks down by both value and susceptibility before you even get into sensitivity. So, but for the reasons we've set out both in our hearing statement, again, insofar so as you're on question 5 or parts of it, there's nothing in this site, and in particular the way that we're proposing developing the site, i.e. putting the houses on the lower slopes so that the upper slopes are left clear / part of the sang, that would indicate any high degree of landscape harm that would arise, and certainly so we're at allocation stage, no showstoppers from a landscape perspective.
Anything the council wants to add, or else by my records we are moving on to question 7. Okay, so the question 7 is the loss of part of Shendish Manor Golf Course justified?
Just by way of update on this, so we obviously taken into account all the hearing statements and representations that have been made. We have, however, received an email correspondence today directly from Sport England, which I presume other people haven't seen. It was an email that was sent to the programme officer today, this morning, as we were travelling here. It's an important email, and it's one that we're going to have to discuss. I believe, and I'm looking towards Louise, she has helpfully printed it off. Thank you very much. What we need to do, because it's an important email, I'll very, very, very quickly summarise it. Essentially, it's an email that's come from Sport England to obviously first apologise for not being here today. And it includes feedback that they received from England Golf. And it's essentially stating that they wish to reinstate their original objections to the site allocation. And it's sort of further to the statement of common ground they made with the council. So essentially they're saying they've done a statement of common ground with the council, then this information from England Golf has come in, and that sort of effectively made them want to go back and reinstate their original objection. So it is obviously something that we need to digest. What I'm going to propose we do, in the interest of fairness, we're going to take a break, take a good sort of 20, 25-minute adjournment. Let's all have a look, sort of cup of tea, and look at this email and see what it says. And we'll reconvene. And, you know, obviously, you know, in the interest of fairness to the council, it's their local plan. This information has come in, coming late, in the interest of fairness to me and Mr. Bristow as well. It's something that Mr. Bristow is probably looking at me going, what on earth is he talking about? What is this email? It's literally come in this morning. We'll take an adjournment. I'll get Louise to hand the copies round, and I'll sort of take views and representations on whether the council and the site promoters happy is not the right word, but probably comfortable with its content and happy to proceed, and doesn't really change position, or conversely, it might do. And we might need to take a view as to what we do. It might be that we need to take a view as to whether or not this warrants a sort of further longer adjournment and sort of revisit of the issue. So let's take an adjournment. Let's see, I've not even had a chance to digest it. It's quite a lengthy email. I can't obviously read it, talk to you, and listen at the same time. Let's go away. We'll all have a look at it. We'll reconvene at past, and we'll take a view as to how we deal with it. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll adjourn now.
Okay, let's adjourn, come back at past. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's resume, let's continue. If I could ask people ensure the microphones are close to their face when they speak to help audibility, and also that your phones are on aircraft mode. I think we had some interference in the previous session, possibly because someone's wasn't. Okay, I'm then going to hand over to Mr. Birkinshaw to deal with the email from Sport England this morning.
Yeah, it's just on the mobile phone. Someone had the hotspot on. It's the personal hotspot that interferes with the microphones, which then interfere with the live stream. Okay, so we've obviously had time to digest this email, and hopefully everyone's got a copy, or seen a copy, or can sit next to somebody with a copy. I'm going to take views firstly from council and then from other participants on this issue. Clearly, it was a matter that we're coming on to on the agenda, but I'll just take views from the council firstly, just in terms of whether we are able, as we sort of sit here today and now, to really give this topic a sort of justice, really, having received this email, really in the interest of fairness, obviously to the council and other participants. Have we got enough before us? So your views on that, really, as to whether you'd feel comfortable discussing this now, or whether actually further time is needed to digest this and potentially allow participants to respond to it before having that discussion.
Thanks, sirs. I think, well, in my view, and I believe the view of the council is we would probably welcome more time on this, just to be able to consider it. It is obviously short notice, and fundamentally the people responsible for the allocations have been sitting here as a view for the last 24, 48 hours, and we need to digest this and probably respond to it appropriately and correctly on that. But notwithstanding, I think, the point, and I would again welcome the views of others around the table on this, what their view would be also. But having regard to the email, and having regard, I think, in particular, the outset that the loss of golf facilities has been a key issue raised through the Reg 19. We have, when we submitted the plan, it was on the basis that we had sufficient confidence and evidence that our approach is robust, and we have worked constructively with Sports England over time, of that period of time, to look at resolving outstanding matters, and that was reflected in the really positive outcomes that we have, and reflected in the statement of common ground with Sports England. At the same time that we submitted our hearing statements for this stage 3 hearings. So with some caution, I guess, we would probably need to reflect on it. In my initial view, I don't believe our position will change with regards to our evidence for the plan as an initial high-level point. I believe we initially still feel that it's a sound allocation and it's been justified not on the sole grounds of sports provision, and that there's wider factors and benefits at play to the allocation as a whole in terms of the benefits it will bring, as set out in ED 39. And I think finally on that, notwithstanding the kind of the change in position, there is still indeed some positive merit and narrative about what the council and the site promoters have been looking at in terms of the option B. Initially seeing the words, it presents a strong fit when considering the fuller golfing journey and the need to expand accessible entry-level opportunities. And later in that paragraph, it is important to recognise that 9-hole golf can already be played at existing 18-hole golf courses, as many golfers choose to play only the front or back 9 to suit time constraints or personal preference. So there's a balance here in terms of looking at what they're saying that we probably need to fully digest in terms of, well, we are seeking to deliver a 9-hole, we are seeking to deliver that fuller golfer's journey, which currently we do not have that in this borough. There is no existing provision for that based on our evidence. And again, in light of that, you know, we probably, initial view right now is that we still feel our evidence is robust. But we would probably welcome the views of others around the table on whether people are comfortable to proceed. And indeed yourselves too on this. We're reflecting, we're all reading it now at the same time. Thank you.
Yes, just to the view, so because Councillor Anderson, because I know that, you know, this is a point that's been made in the representations, you know, by yourself and others, but just your views really on sort of, I guess really the sort of the procedural aspect of how we deal with this. Obviously, it's come in very late in the day. It's something that's only just before us. Whether your position is happy to proceed or actually a bit more time is needed to sort of digest and respond to this.
I haven't had the opportunity to consult the folks around me, but I'm pretty sure that we would have procedurally no issue with an adjournment, particularly as you have other sites to consider today. It does mean that I do have a point to raise under question 8, and of course our summaries at the end. But I think it might be a neater solution, if I might suggest that you just adjourn HM11 and proceed with the other sites. Obviously, I'd like to get it all done today, but in view of this last-minute intervention, irrespective of which party it supports, I've no issue with an adjournment.
Sir, thank you. Just a couple of points picking up on an almost prior procedural question, if it were. For those working only on a paper copy of the email, there are 2 diagrams or boxes in the digital copy of the email that haven't made it into this paper copy. I just flagged that so that in case they're referred to, there's no confusion on behalf of those who are only working paper-wise. In terms of how to deal with the email today, obviously we've looked at it and we've sent it to our golf consultants. There are some things that they have indicated they would like more time to deal with. So there are some detailed points that we could come back with. And I would like to just, rather than an adjournment, our suggestion would be just some time to put small, short additional points in writing on matters of detail. In terms of the broad strokes of this and how it features in the decision for you, so we're comfortable that we can deal with kind of the broad strokes and the big points today, orally.
I think given that the issue goes to, it does go to the heart of soundness. It is about consistency with national planning policy and it is about whether or not the allocation is justified. It's a matter which Mr. Bristow and I obviously need to get to the bottom of. And for those who don't, Mr. Grant's right, for those who've got the paper copy, there is actually some sort of figures in the email, which obviously I've got on the screen from Sport England. I think what we need is, we need, in the interest of fairness, obviously, people's views on that email. And bearing in mind that even the printed out copy isn't the full extent of the email, I'd be slightly concerned about discussing that here and now. So I think what we need to do really is I think we do need to revisit this site in the context of this particular issue. I'm not going to have this whole hearing session again. We're not going to come back and talk about, you know, the green belt and access and highways, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bristow, who can sort of mop up any other points that people have got. I think we do need to have a very focused, specific, narrow discussion on this issue to guide that discussion. We do need written comments from participants. I don't want to be going into another discussion on this, not knowing what people's views are on it. So we need 2 things. We need this circulating, obviously to the people here today and other people that made representations on this issue. And we can do a sort of inspector-led consultation on that in written form to see people's written views on this. We then need to then mop it back up in a short, focused discussion, hence why we put reserve days in the hearing programme. Now, I'm probably working towards we have a reserve day from memory at the very end of this block of hearings, 26th. Is that right? I need to go away and look at the logistics of this, but I think that probably allows enough time to circulate this. You know, we don't want to overly delay local plan examinations. It's a new issue, but it's not a new issue. I think Mr. Layden's right. This issue has clearly been on the table. It's not something that's sort of an entirely new concept. You know, people have been sort of making these points. So unless there's any strong objections, thinking off the top of my head, I'd probably propose that we have a short period for any written submissions on this. They're then circulated, and then we reconvene this session focused entirely on the on this issue on the 26th of March. Comments, objections on that, Mr. Anderson? Yeah.
Just a moment, sir. Sorry. No. I have no issue with that. One of the issues I wanted to raise under question 8 is connected from the golfing question 7, with the proviso that that can be picked up as part of the discussion about the golfing facilities. I'm happy to support that.
Is that about the interaction of the golfing facilities and the suitable alternative natural green space? I think that's fair, because the issue is how the two relate to one another. So I think that's fair. So yes, that point can be raised in that session as well.
And just to be clear, sir, we're talking about, are we going to continue with the general discussion about the question now and save the specifics of this email for that later session? Fine, thank you. I just wanted to, or were we going to do the whole of question 7 on the 26th? That was the only thing in my mind.
Let's leave this entire issue. I know there's crossover and it goes to the heart of exceptional circumstances, etc. And it may well be that on the 26th, yes, there is a sort of general, you know, having heard what we've just heard, do the exceptional circumstances, you know, is the allocation justified? Let's park though the golf side bit until the 26th, because otherwise we'll end up talking about it and then people say, oh, well, actually it's for England, and let's just leave the whole thing. We've got time to digest this. We can take people's written submissions and reconvene on that issue. Mr. Layden, any objections to that approach from the council?
No, sorry, I think it's sensible.
Yeah. Mr. Grant?
May I just ask for just some further clarification, lest the consultation be at all misunderstood? When you talk about, and suggest quite understandably to put the whole issue off, my understanding is that you're referring to question 7. Thank you.
And as I said, there's some natural crossover, isn't there? Because if you're arguing that exceptional circumstances don't exist, then part of the objector's case is because of the. So there's a bit of a, but entirely the issue. Mr. Grant?
Yes, so we're content with that.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Bristow?
Good. That sounds like a reasonable way forward. Thank you for that. So then it leads us on to question 8, which I suppose, carving out from your minds question 7, is there anything else on policy HM11? Now, I've said one of the points I wanted to raise, if it had not been raised naturally, was the interaction between suitable alternative natural green space and the golf course. That is also going to be chalked up to a session we have on question 7 in time. The two other points I wanted to ask the council about on this, and maybe if I go first, and then if anything other than question 7, if there are any points around the table, we'll address those. It comes back to utilities infrastructure. And so I have seen from a representation, I'm looking over there, in terms of water supply. Now, conscious, it's the Water Industries Act 1990-1991, but as I have it from Mr. Scott's statement, Affinity Water have stated that water supplies are under serious stress, necessitating demand management, and they have fundamental implications in terms of levels of growth that can be sustained. So in terms of the site being deliverable, developable, what's the council's position on that point?
Thank you, sirs. We discussed infrastructure extensively through the stage 1 hearing sessions, and the matter of water and wastewater was given quite a bit of time, and the council's position was set out hopefully as clearly as possible then to you, sirs, and to those as well. But it is probably better now to be, in light of that, to look at what we have said within ED 39, our summary of sites for Shendish, as we have done consistently for all these sites. On page 66 of ED 39, specific matter of water and wastewater is captured within that, and that reflects the position up to regulation 19. And with that water, there's sufficient supply of water in the region. However, reinforcements to the network, including possible new pumping stations, are likely to be required. Affinity Water also noted there are water mains apparatus within the boundary of this site through their representations on the IDP, IDV 01.1. Wastewater, Thames Water have confirmed through their May 2024 representations to the IDP that based on the information available, the scale of development is likely to require upgrades to the water infrastructure, wastewater network. Following on from that, on page 68, we do have what has happened since pre-submission considerations. And we have seen in that the Regulation 20 representations for Thames Water state that for this site, on the information provided, modelling will be required, and it's likely that upgrades to the wastewater network will be necessary. Thames Water also noted that they are aware of capacity concerns at Maple Lodge Street works, and a scheme is planned to accommodate future growth. Officers determined that this change in position 2023 would not prevent the site from being delivered during the period of the local plan. So just, yeah, I'll just pass over to Ms. Mitchell just to wrap that up.
I understand that, but I think in the last sentence you mentioned nothing to prevent it being delivered within the period of the local plan. Pause there, because we have a timescale of delivery, and this may be a question that Mr. Grant wants to field about engagement that they've done with Affinity Water and Thames Water. Timescale is from 2027, 2028 delivery. Various bits of new infrastructure, it seems, will be needed. Just if we are, this is a hypothetical, if we are with you that the allocation is justified and we reach that view, can we then realistically on that basis reach a view that the timescale should be 2027, 2028 in light of that? Ms. Mitchell.
So flag within the addendum to the Statement of Common Ground, we proposed amending the trajectory to, well, it's by 1 year, but also less to be delivered within the first year also. So DBC,
let me just go there, because that I did want to look at your proposed main modifications, the last question I had. Before I do, let's turn to Mr. Grant on that point.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. Thank you for your forbearance. Starting with the preliminary point of whether it affects the principle or not, obviously that's we have nothing really to add to what officers in the council have already said. Fundamentally, it's you know, to the extent there's an issue, it's a temporary issue rather than a permanent one, and the relevant undertakers are aware and are addressing it. In relation to the specific timescale point, we've got a technical report. We've got a technical report being prepared now, sir, as it happens. But we wouldn't have signed the Statement of Common Ground with the council if we didn't think that was what the trajectory was going to be.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Mr. Scott will disagree, but Mr. Scott, do you want to say what you want? Then, if necessary, I'll go back to the point. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Terribly sorry. Could you just pop the mic? Oh, you're okay. Yeah, you've got assistance from the county council. There we are.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I would actually like to add a little bit more information in respect of this aspect, particularly in respect of the impact of the proposed development on the River Gade and the rare variable chalk stream. The Environmental Agency and Chilterns National Landscape have for some time had serious concerns about the condition of the stream, currently related as poor, and often suffering pollution from foul water overflows. Additionally, the stream has been deprived of chalk aquifers as a result of abstraction for freshwater supplies by Affinity Water from the Chiltern Hills, including the hills immediately above Apsley. In order to reduce the damage caused by the chalk streams, Affinity Water have been required to develop alternative sources for freshwater supplies, improve efficiency, and introduce more stringent usage controls. They've already reduced the quantity of water abstracted from the hills and committed to progressively reduce it further. The planned development located on these important hills would result in preventing the natural absorption and filtration process into the aquifers over the site area. Indeed, the proposals would result in diverting surface water into drainage systems, substantially increasing sewage and potential pollution of the chalk stream. Certainly, these would impact much more damage than for the reasons that abstraction has been scaled back. Chilterns National Landscapes, in conjunction with the Environment Agency, has issued a planning guidance document that provides assistance to public authorities in reaching planning decisions. The document follows up the requirements for the environmental protection under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act and national policies. It provides guidance for development proposals that, due to their location, scale, type, and nature, may pose threats to chalk streams and the rich biodiversity benefits that they bring to us. The document states that developments must not cause deterioration of aquifers and must avoid harming biodiversity. In the circumstances, I consider that the proposed development fails to comply with the national policies and is unsound and should be removed from the local plan.
Thank you. Now, the reason I went a little bit quiet there is because I think this touches on an important point that comes out again and again in terms of site allocations, the position of Natural England landscapes, in particular that guidance you've referred to on chalk stream habitats. Would you, so I'm not aware, although you may correct me, that there's been an objection to this allocation from the Chilterns National Landscape or from Natural England, the former involved in the chalk streams planning guidance. Would it be of any comfort to you if there was a criterion in this policy requiring adherence to the chalk streams planning guidance produced by the Chilterns National Landscape? Or is your view that fundamentally development here would have an adverse effect that can't be mitigated?
I think it would have a very adverse effect on it. And I think, bear in mind also that there's been a lot of investment in upgrading and trying to protect the chalk streams the other side of Hemel, Hempstead, in Cambridge Park. Millions and millions of pounds have been put into that. And it is actually evident, very evident, that actually the stretch of the Gade River along London Road, and there is particularly in poor condition and actually suffering from the overflows and just overspill into the stream.
Thank you. I've got that point. Is this a separate point you're going on to? Because I want to ask the council about it. Sorry, are you going on to a separate point, or is this more articulation of the chalk streams?
I just want to emphasise that what we have here is a situation where the old drainage systems, that the water, surface water and sewage actually runs into the same pipework. So when you got very, very high hills, and when in actual fact you get heavy rainfall, the current sewers pipework is insufficient to actually cater for it. The pollutants actually just flow, and actually the only escape is actually the opportunity for I think it actually is Thames water, as far as that's concerned, to discharge into the river. So I really do think that when it comes down to it, there isn't a quick fix on this. It's a case that whatever is done, even if there was new sewers that were actually put in place, you would still have the issues where, in fact, a lot of the properties and buildings there are actually served by old regulated pipework, sewers, and it will be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to actually replace those in a way to avoid the problems. The aquifers themselves actually do provide some sort of cleansing of the river and moves the pollutants on. So that would also be effectively lost under the circumstances of the developing that site.
Thank you. Any points from the council on this?
Just to flag, there we go. Okay, so we've received no objections in the Regulation 20 representations on this site from the Environment Agency, Natural England, Chilterns Conservation Board, or the lead local flood authority. We've received comments on the infrastructure delivery plan, which is an internal consultation prior to publication, which referred to surface water flow on the site. We believe that the site-specific policy, which is flood risk and drainage, point 1, addresses those directly. And then the following point, 2, above ground SUD should be used as far as practicable. Discharge restricted to greenfield runoff rates. That responds to the source protection zone constraints identified within ED 39.
Thank you. And in terms of this general point, the plan, it does crop up in a number of instances, so probably why don't we cover it now? The general point, reference to the chalk streams planning guidance, which is a joint collaboration between a number of authorities, Chiltern National Landscapes Board, I think, orchestrating it. What would your view be on whether that is necessary as a modification, as a main modification, given obviously the importance of the river gauge?
Thank you, sir. Interestingly, we did have a conversation directly with Chiltern Conservation Board, separate from this process. They proactively kind of approached us saying, we've produced this. You know, we'd like to see it be adopted as an SBD. Principally, that was the tone of that discussion. We did review it. We gave it some careful consideration. We ultimately felt that as a document, there was a potential that in adopting an SBD, there may be a potential risk that it might not be consistent with the policy of the plan because it covers a geographic extent of multiple authorities and extents. That was just a point of materiality on that. And I at the same time, we did kind of draw in our response to that, we did say, it's really, really useful document. We do see the benefits of it. We do feel at the same time that our plan and its requirements isn't wholly inconsistent with it in terms of what it seeks to do more broadly. So in the context of the plan read as a whole and the policies as a whole that apply to development, and particularly with that Chiltern National Landscape, we were probably content. We said, it's really useful. We probably need to dwell on it a bit more, but probably don't think it's necessary at this stage.
There's a broader point which and I think Mr. Birkinshaw mentioned it yesterday, and so soon we're going to move on to some other allocations, but not immediately. But if there's anything that's very specific, so if there's anything specific to this site, so Mr. Scott has raised what he considers to be some very specific issues, in terms of looking through the various criteria, if it's a specific thing that is needed here, refer to it in the allocation. If it's a general thing that applies, sorry, I'm not phrasing that particularly professionally. If it's a general issue that applies to all sites, so for example, as appropriate, having regard to the chalk streams planning guidance in terms of your flooding policy, that's fine in terms of your flooding policy or water policy. If there's anything specific that's needed, putting it in our allocation. And I think our encouragement would be just to have a good look through all the various criteria that are there in policies and sort of coming on to effectiveness as a test of soundness, just to make sure that there's no compare and contrast between those. Yeah, so I'll just say that, but thank you, I've heard that. I don't know if Mr. Grant wants to come in. I've probably heard what I need to on that.
So in that case, I'll be incredibly brief. We agree with what's been said by the council, particularly regarding sort of non-objections from the resident bodies that you would expect to be objecting on these points. In terms of the site as a vessel for drainage, if I can put it in that way, obviously there are drainage policies and questions of impact, like for example on the Torque stream, will be considered as part of that. And indeed, so as I understand it, the drainage is currently being designed in line with national standards for sustainable drainage, and that is taking the chalk stream guidance into account. So even if it doesn't feature as a specific thing in this allocation, notwithstanding the general point so that you've made, it doesn't follow that it would get put to one side at planning application stage, which of course is what follows next. So I think that's all I have to add to what's already been made.
Okay. Excuse me. So then if we have the council's Matter 5 hearing statement before us, there are a few main modifications that I just want to touch on, in particular with having a view to the future session, because two of them concern golf facilities. So we will need to come back to those at such point as we've all commented on that letter from Sport England that was received today. The other modifications that have been proposed are to the site boundary that we've talked about, and there also seems to be some clarification in terms of the precise hectarage of greenbelt versus non-greenbelt, which comes down to very small numbers, but I presume that's a consequential in terms of the different mapping, the refinement of the mapping.
I think if you agree to the proposed major modification of the greenbelt boundary, then the change in areas would be what we consider a kind of minor reflection of those changes on the map.
Thank you. So I know there's one flag up. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, sirs. Just to say that your feedback on our hearing statement yesterday did make its way to me, and that you consider that a series of the modifications we're seeking to secure are not necessarily soundness issues. I'm not going to go into great detail around that, but just to say that what we were trying to achieve through requesting those is the appropriate spatial spread of our service provision. And I'm sure you've got that, but it's just, I'd like to make the point, and I'll make it here and I won't make it on every site, but there are, deficits of childcare across the borough, and there are appropriate remedies to that. There are sites that are/aren't appropriate for specialist housing. So we've tried to filter that out now. And in the context of making it clear that what would be expected from any planning application, we take the view that some site-specific policy mods would be needed. But we've taken your feedback on board and just make that point that you may, hopefully, but suspect not, reconsider it in that context.
So firstly, I said this at St Albans, we're absolutely not going to put in a plan where the location of vulnerable individuals are. Absolutely not. Secondly, I entirely agree, and I said it yesterday, that providing for different needs of people in the community is absolutely right in terms of spatial spread. Got it. The problem with so I'm very happy for you to talk to the council about some form of wording that can work. The problem I have, and the problem Mr. Birkinshaw, I think we talked through in terms of St Albans as well, was that if there are hard figures, and that's really where it comes to our concern, if there are hard figures in terms of a particular number, and someone, say, wants to provide more or less in a certain area, then you are hidebound to go with what the plan says. And that causes you as much problem as it does for the council to determine those applications. So in terms of the purpose of that modification, absolutely, consistency with policy, entirely agree with what you've just said, and I appreciate your perspective. In terms of the detail of what we were presented with, no. Okay, but that's a very useful point because it does crop up in a number of different situations. Okay, any last points on HM11? I can see Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, sir. You did ask me to save my bits for the end. So here they come. First off, it was asked very near the beginning, was this allocation previously made? When was it put in and out of the local plan? I've actually participated, this is my 4th local plan cycle whilst I've been a member of this authority. And I can advise that on the 3 previous occasions, this site was not included. It was proposed by the then owners or the current owner, and they were not included in the previous local plans because of the many problems that we've highlighted in our submissions and today. And I take the view that those reasons have not changed sufficiently to be able to place any confidence on this site being deliverable. I still think that there are access and highway issues. Yes.
Just on that, just to be abundantly clear, was that the site had been proposed to the council and the council decided not to take it forward, or was it proposed in a development plan and an inspector recommended Maymons to take it out?
No, it's definitely the case of the former. At these hearings in the past, the developer has been one of the ones that's not on the plan trying to get on it, like the ones we saw yesterday morning when I was here. It wasn't in the plan. And you've reminded me, thank you, sir, the other point I was going to make on this particular point is that this site was included at the last minute for the Regulation 19. The council had been through not 1 but 3 Regulation 18 consultations over an extended period of time. There was no public expectation that this site would be included at the Regulation 19 stage, and it was included at the last minute. And as you've seen in my written submissions, I believe that's in breach of policy, certainly the council's statement of community involvement, if not also the general expectation that the planning regulation concerning general expectation. And one can also add to that how this scheme somehow managed to get entwined in the Hemel Gardens community, which again, as we've referred to in our written comments, that really that's on the other side of the town and not relevant in this case. My second point I wanted to make, sir, was that to clear up just draw a line under this issue about the debate over the COMET modelling used by the Highway Authority. Just to make the point that the error that we highlighted isn't a matter of inconsequential geography. It is a very genuine error, and it's the details of which are included in our report that we've already submitted.
Only on that point, I don't want to hear any more from anyone else on that because we've got the report, but thank you. Yeah, we will look into that. Thanks.
My third point briefly, sir, is that I have to agree to disagree with the promoter. I don't think it is fair or acceptable to issue TROs to remove on-street parking from roads where residents do not have any other ability to park. I think that is a grossly unfair position to take. I hope that inspectors can take that on board. Fourthly, we did very nearly touch on sustainability at one point in the debate, but we didn't quite get stuck into it. I just want to stress the point made in written statements that my view is that railway represents an impenetrable barrier as a result of the unviability of the new bridge that had to be built for the Manor State extension. I do not believe that what's being proposed here is a sustainable location. I understand that the reports have been received that say it is. I just happen to say I've done the homework. I hope to demonstrate it isn't. And my final point is I had some issues producing the photographs that went with the highways report. I hope, sirs, you've got a copy of my email this morning, where I actually tried to produce those photographs in a form that are a lot more legible and easier to read. I also presented some more photographs in a separate document to demonstrate the impact on the landscape and to demonstrate that the development concerned would come much higher up the hill than is being claimed by the promoters and is clearly visible from the 3 separate locations on the other side of the Gate Valley, because it would fill, the sprawl would spread from the right to left as you look at it, and would clearly visible. It's not a development that would be hidden by the railway line. It would be clearly visible from across the whole of the Gate Valley. And I think that's all the points I wanted to make. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So please don't anyone else take the lead from Sport England of emailing us on the hawk. Because you mentioned that you are you've sent through some, so I've made a very careful note of all those points which come through very clearly from your representation. I just want to check that those photographs that you sent were originally appended to, say, your hearing statement or your Regulation 19. They're not new things you've suggested today that, we have a look at.
We just for clarity, we will only take into account the hearing statements that were submitted. It's in the interest of fairness. We can't take into account anything else that's been submitted out of that. The exception here is the email from Sport England, because it goes to the heart of a sort of factual position as to their position has changed because of something very material. In terms of people adding to statements and sort of expanding on photographs, we can't take that into account.
I was not attempting to provide new material. It was related to existing material, but if I can leave it to you to decide whether it's new or not, thank you.
Thank you. So out of fairness, Mr. Grant, anything you want to say, and then to the council, anything you want to say?
Thank you, sir. In terms of the broader overarching point on question 8 about whether the allocation is justified, effective and consistent with national policy, refer, sir, to what we've put out fairly fully in our hearing statement, and to save time I won't go over that today. Just to pick up some of the points that have just been made. In terms of previous allocations in the attempts to get it into the previous plan, we agree with the point that was made, i.e. it was put to the council and the council didn't include it rather than it was put in and taken out. Of course, that was in a very different time period. The housing need per year has at least doubled since some of those earlier plans. And of course, what you don't have before you is the particular things that were promoted. I don't, from whisperings behind me, you can't assume that it's exactly the same as the sites and boundaries that we've put in now. There were, as I understand it, suggestions that it should go all the way down to the A41, so it's not going to be exactly the same as you've got before you today. The point being made that the site was included last minute, we don't accept the last minute pejorative. It came out of the Reg 18 consultations, and one might think that's kind of the purposes of what Reg 18 consultations are for. Comment I won't pick up. The point on the TRO, so that was simply a point that the routes to the north of the site are not unmanageable. It was an example of how it could be resolved. We don't accept as a matter of fact that those on Linnet Way and King Edward Road don't have off-street parking. We think they do, but you'll be able to see that on site. So I don't think I can take that further. As to whether the railway is an impenetrable barrier, well, you've got Sir Ruckler's Lane and the Manor Estate that are already breaching the railway, so it's clearly not. And in terms of the development's visibility, so all I can do is refer you to the notes that have been appended to our Regs 19 and Regs 20 submissions from HDA, which are obviously professional landscape bodies that have looked at this, applying the professional lens that they are required to do. And the hearing statement, sorry. Unless, sir, I can be of any more help. No, sir, that's it.
Very clear summary from your perspective. Thank you. Anything the council want to say? We may be happy with what you said already.
just to really add to the point on the statement of community involvement, we responded to this within our kind of appendix to the regulation 22. I'll find out the page because it's a long document. In 95, where we said that we consider that local plan's been subject to 3 regulation 18 consultations. The site was introduced under the reference HH-H3 in 2017. So that's PCD 14.1. And then our response to you, NED 39, then sets out summary justifications on pages 67 to 68 as to why the site wasn't included within the 2020, so the next Regulation 18 consultation following on from 2017, and then 23, and then why we considered that the site could be allocated or proposed to be allocated within the Regulation 19, so that's set out within those summary justifications for each stage.
Thank you. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of everything, unless there's anything, Mr. Birkinshaw, that you want to raise on HM11. I suggest we have a very short adjournment, and I'd like to deal, when we come back, with HM03, HM05. One question, though, we will make arrangements, of course, for the circulation and subsequent hearing session on question 7. One question, though, is anyone here on policy HM12? One, okay, there's one individual. Because I'm going to say, I think I'm right in saying, sorry, I should have maybe dealt with this initially, that the council has, in the absence of a willing landowner, and therefore the availability of the site, I think the council has proposed deleting this site, which, if my understanding is correct, is entirely consistent with your perspective. So unless, I think I'm right in saying that unless there is anything to tie up, we're not going to stand in the way if a site is not deliverable, not developable, accepted by the council and the promoter. We're not going to, it would be remarkable if we took a different view on that. So I don't think there is anything in there that we need to cover from my perspective, unless I'm sort of looking to see if I'm wrong on that, on HM12. But I just wanted to do that now, because if we are going to go on to HM5 and HM03, just in terms of time.
No, that's fine with me, thank you.
Commendably succinct commentary there. Okay, let's maybe just take 5 or 10 minutes. So let's come back at 12:30, and then HM03, HM05. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for being back and for your patience if we've not come to your site earlier in proceedings. Thank you very much. Let's resume. So we're on policy HMO3, which is Hemel Hempstead Hospital, which we have in the local plan as previously MU2/2, so it was an allocation. I think I'm right in saying in the DPD, the allocations development plan document, but
Adopted site allocations, DPD, from 2017.
thank you. And one of my questions will be, how come the long lead-in time? Because we're talking about a developable site here in the council's view rather than a deliverable site. And obviously, there have been ongoing issues which we'll come on to since sort of 2017. We're now 20 years. So looking at when delivery is anticipated on terms of HMO3, we're looking at 20 years. But anyway, that's coming up. Let me step back. So allocation HMO3 is a site of 7.21 hectares. It's allocated in the plan for around 450 dwellings with quite a long lead-in time in terms of anticipated delivery. It's linked to some extent, not geographically, but to HMO5, Market Square, which is a smaller site, so that's 0.53 hectares, where the council are looking at an integrated health campus, although that might have changed by a suggested main modification, where existing hospital services at allocation HM3 are intended to relocate to. I'll come back to that point as well. So to start off with, if we're taking HMO3 and HMO4 together, which logically they go together, could the council just explain any current planning status, any history? We've already had the history of one of those sites. That would be a very useful starting point. Thank you.
So in terms of the planning status, no live applications on either site at the moment. So there's any necessarily relevant history to this scheme. There's the extensive planning histories in relation to conversions of buildings within HMO3, but nothing in relation to the delivery of the proposal within CDO 1.1 yet.
So the key challenge, and I'm looking in a certain direction, and I just want to be clear, and this may be a question for yourself, Dr. Aylett. Thank you for being here, of Dacorum Health Action. I read very carefully what you said. And is your challenge more, if I can phrase it like this, and sorry if this is not coming across correctly, against, if you like, the decision of the NHS and the ICB and the process that they went through in terms of looking at future need? Or is it in terms of the allocations in the plan per se? Dr. Aylett.
Thank you. I think it does relate directly to your work. The process that's been gone through to engage the public on the question was a joint process between the Borough Council and the NHS. I must stress from the beginning that this was a very major divergence from established practice. The normal practice, as I set out, is that there's a lot of detail that's given to the public and public respond, specifically on sites. So that's where it relates, I think, to your work. And there are a lot of information which was made available in 2019, 2020, and 2022 on the sites and also on demand, which is not available at this point. So at the moment, what I'm saying is that it's not justified because we don't have proportionate evidence, because in previous occasions, the NHS did do a very thorough job. This occasion has not been that thorough. So we're at a situation where the site has fundamentally been decided from the point of view of the NHS and also from the council's point of view, but without
full, robustness of the evidence being tested. And there's lots to talk about that, but I can go into more detail if you want.
That's a very helpful explanation. And I'm not sure if I'm looking quite in the right place, whether it's the NHS teaching hospitals, whether it's the ICB, apologies, ICHB we had down our way. But what I'm sure they would point to is the 10-year transformation plan. I think you referred to it in your documents, which presumably is out there. It's a statement of public record. That is what you're going to do. And I'm not saying, it's not my role to investigate whether that was done according to previous protocols. But what they would say is, well, we have this plan in terms of our transformation. The sites that flow from that in the local plan are consistent with that. What would you say to that?
Because the transformation plan brings together a lot of previous policy. And I think what is not established in the hearing statements we got is that it is a necessary follow-up, it necessarily follows from that transformation plan that the only place that it should really go is on the market square. I think there are many similarities between the market square and part of the current site, which is the northwest corner closest to Marlowe's. I think it's a very developable site, and it fits in very well with the 10-year transformation plan.
And so before I come on to it's probably the council, from what I can see, and I spent a little bit of time talking about the size of the sites. So we have 7.21 for HMO3, obviously a sprawling multi-phase hospital that has, grown up and evolved over the years. And we have HMO5 Market Square, which is, I think it's fair to say, something of the historic centre of Hemel, Hempstead, which is at 0.53 hectares. The thing I struggle to understand, and the answer may be in what we've talked about, is that HMO5, which is about 7 times smaller than HMO3, is designed, and I think the phrase is, the existing hospital services at HMO3 would be relocated to a new integrated health campus on site. So what we're actually talking about, surely, is a significant reduction in terms of provision. And I think that's probably at the core of your concern. So can I turn to so we've talked a bit, and I will come to the NHS and ICB, but can I just get the council's view on the sort of rationale for those allocations and what that means in terms of health provision?
Sure. So within my response to question 1 for HMO3, HMO5, essentially sets out the options that were considered within the strategic outline case, which was prepared by the NHS of the Trust. This essentially set out capacity modelling, so demand and capacity modelling undertaken by the Trust, and this would ensure that what was being proposed would meet needs. So that's clarified in paragraph 4.36. And then the options are in 4.37. I don't have, I know that they will, the exact percentage of HMO3 which currently isn't in use, but one of the kind of main reasons why option 4, the new build, was selected as a preferred way forward is actually that it would replace the outdated hospital with a more efficient facility, help reduce running costs. It said that the modern working environment, having collaboration within one building as opposed to having to move between multiple buildings on an estate. and also saying that this would provide a building design specifically for integrated and co-located services.
I think from, and I'm dropping into sort of an effectiveness, the way the policy reads perspective, what confused me, well, setting aside that I suppose if I'm being open, you know, the market square is quite a focal point of the town with some constraints, and I'm not sure what the scheme would particularly look. I can't see it in my mind necessarily. That's by the by. But in terms of the criterion under social and community to HMO5, you have first preference would be that the existing hospital services currently provided on site HMO3 would be relocated. Well, I'm not sure that's right because the size of the site probably wouldn't allow it. Anyway, so that's one concern I have based on what I've read. And then the second criteria seems like this raises a point about actually whether this will be delivered. If this is unfeasible, so actually if you can't relocate or rationalise health services to this site, opportunities should be explored to redevelop the square to encourage greater public use. So that unfeasibility then brings into question, in my mind, HMO3. So is it feasible? Are we being presented with evidence to justify HMO3 and HMO5? Or are we being presented with something that may or may not happen? And that's really my concern in terms of the effectiveness of this policy and delivery. So over to the council.
I think at the time of drafting the policy, the strategic outline case hadn't been formalised. I think that was approved, or no, approved to, yeah, where am I? Completed in 2025. So it was a...
Is it the 10-year plan, is it? The transformation? No.
So forgive me. This is a, for any kind of public government spending of money, they have to follow the business case process within the Treasury's Green Book. So the first stage would be the project initiation document,